Hi, I'm Martin Curtis, and this is Change from the Centre. It's worth saying I'm a very tired Martin Curtis. I'm recording this on the 8th of May, which is the day after the local elections, and I was up a lot of last night, being the political geek that I am. And I want to talk today about the local election results. And the national media are all going through the headlines with everybody trying to obviously mitigate the impact where they've had a bad day, or the Greens and to a much greater extent Reform UK claiming that this is a big breakthrough and everything else. I've been through the results, looking at it a little bit differently, and I think that the results are still pretty much a protest vote. They've just gone to different places, and that's what's causing the political upheaval. It's worth saying, by the way, that although I do think they're a protest vote, they're a bigger protest vote than we've ever seen. And that is a wake up call for the Labour Party. But the Conservative Party should not be complacent in all of this. They are losing seats today as well. And this is at a time in the election cycle where they should be at an absolute high. So I'm going to go through and analyze a few things today and just talk about why I think it's a protest vote, and then go on to some of the implications of today's results as well. So before I get on to the meat of what I want to talk about today, I want to say a little bit about candidates. I'm going to say a few difficult things about candidates, about the share of votes some of them got and things like that later on. But I want to say that every candidate has stood actually within the framework and the electoral framework that we've got. And I take my hat off to anybody that's absolutely stood, and congratulate all those who've won. And in particular, those candidates and those existing councillors who have not won seats or lost seats that they held before because of the unpopularity of the Labour Party and the Conservatives, and potentially other parties as well. Because of that unpopularity, have lost their seats. I really, really feel for you. I think personally that the fact that people are losing seats because of national politics and because of the way our parties are nationally is an absolute shame. And it's a clear indicator of the fact that our political system is fundamentally broken. Parties should be winning elections based on the vision they've got and for how they've delivered in the previous 4 years. They should not be winning or losing based on how popular their party is at a national level. And we need to make local government more meaningful, because it will strengthen democracy in that sense, because it will change the way people vote. So why is it that I think that the election and the success of Reform UK and of the Green Party is a protest vote? It's worth saying, first of all, it's a massive protest vote, and it's a protest vote that is growing election by election, and that's something that's quite important. The reason for that is people are getting more and more disillusioned with politics, and yet politics is not changing. And I would say the media have a role to play in that as well, to be honest. The media need to start talking about solutions as well as problems, and they don't do it enough. But politicians have it within them, not through legislation, but through pressure, through the way they engage, to actually get the media to do that. One of the reasons I think there are signs that this is a protest vote is by looking at some of those councils where the results were the potential results were quite tight and the outcomes were quite tight and doubtful, and where the Conservatives and Labour were fighting neck and neck against each other. A good example of this is Harlow, where it was quite a tight council before the elections today. And actually what happened is people came out in their droves, voted Conservative. Every single seat went to the Conservatives, and it is now a strong Conservative council. There are other examples in London. I think Wandsworth is a good example where, yes, there were Green candidates, yes, there were Reform candidates, but actually every single result and every single seat went to either the Conservatives or to Labour. And there are a couple of other examples in London as well. The ones I've got written down are Westminster and Hammersmith and Fulham. And that's only me taking a brief look, because I haven't got time to look at every single council across the country. But that says to me that where there is something meaningful under debate and where the outcome means something, people have resorted to type and voted for the Conservatives or Labour. There are a couple of other things as well, one of which is the lack of an impact that the negative and substantially negative headlines that Reform and the Greens got in the run up to the election, and how little impact that seems to have had. And I don't think that these are issues that where this was the media whipping up a storm for the media's sake. I think these are both pretty substantial issues. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So this is one of them. So this is the Green Party and its anti-Semitism issues. It's quite clear that the Green Party, amongst some, not all, I know people who are Green Party councillors, and excellent councillors they are too. But I don't think that the electorate would have gone for a party that has got an anti-Semitism problem. I think there's a bit of history there about what happened to Jeremy Corbyn in the end, largely because of this issue. And this is a real substantive issue. There are people within within the Green Party who are anti-Semites. It's a shame to say that. I hate saying it, but it's a reality. And I don't think in a general election where this is a party that might be screaming for power and power within potentially a coalition, I don't think people would have turned out and voted Green in the way they did. And there's a similar example with Reform UK as well, which is this mass deportation plan. Irrespective of whether a mass deportation plan is right or wrong, there are all sorts of issues around demographics and what the demographics would mean if this became a policy for our taxation system, given the fact that we've got an older population. And we'll deal with that in another time. But the mass deportation plan in itself was not necessarily the issue. The issue was the Reform Party policy, which is that they would put those Green voting, they would put those detention centres in Green voting areas. Now, I don't think that's legal, first of all, and that's a starting point. But punishing people because they don't vote Reform, or because they haven't voted Reform, or they haven't voted the way Reform would have liked them to, I think is horrific in truth. In fact, I would say I don't think that, let's be clear, I don't think Reform UK overall are a fascist party, and it's not a phrase I like using, but I think this policy has fascist elements to it. And I think that's very, very dangerous. And the fact that people were able to look at this, loads of people will have recognised the rights and wrongs of it, and will have still have voted Reform UK because they don't think this matters at this particular point. They can put a cross in this box because it's not one of the establishment parties, and know that at this particular time, that's meaningless. I hate saying and using, the words fascist elements. I think it goes without saying that anti-Semitism has a bit of that about it, and that's where these parties are pushing to the extremes in ways that we should be really uncomfortable. But people are not uncomfortable at this point, and I'll repeat it, and it is because, in my view, they're able to put a cross here and know that it is not meaningless, that it is not meaningful. And I don't think that would have happened during a general election. I haven't talked about here the issues that there were in the run-up to the election around Nigel Farage and his £5 million personal donation. nor have I talked about the issues around Zach Polanski and the expose there is around his CV and stuff like that. And the reason for that is I don't think that those issues are necessarily exclusive to the parties at the edges of British politics. I think those issues we've seen absolutely elsewhere. And so I think we should recognise that those issues are part of the malaise overall in British politics, not part of issues that face around reform and the Green Party. So where does this leave us? Well, I think the messages here are very, very clearly for me, for the Conservative Party and the Labour Party. The Labour Party is very, very obvious. But the Conservative Party at this stage in the election cycle historically would have been winning hundreds upon hundreds of seats. And the fact that they're not making gains, which has an impact come general election, because the people that they elect now will be the foot soldiers for the MPs and the candidates at the next general election. But the message is clear that something needs to change. And that message has been clear for some time. Keir Starmer today has talked about recognising things need to change. He talked about setting out a fresh vision, but it's got to be a fresh vision, not just about policy, although policy is important. It's got to be a fresh vision about revisiting how our politics works. One of the things I've done is done some digging, because I knew something was going to happen in this election, and I've talked about it earlier on, which is that people are going to be elected with a tiny share of the vote. And I did some digging and I found some places, I think Salford was one of them, where a councillor won with just 6% of the total electorate voting for him. There are loads and loads of other seats where candidates have become councillors with less than 10% of the total electorate supporting them. And that's because of the traditionally low turnout in local elections, but also the fact that there's a much wider spread of candidates. And much as I congratulate those guys for standing up and being counted, there's a reality, which is you start to challenge whether 6% or 10% of the total electorate in your ward is a mandate. And the Labour Party have got to recognise this, the Conservatives have got to recognise it, and recognise that part of the solution to this is to make every single vote count, so that outcomes are more meaningful. And so people have got a reason to turn out as well. A lot of the reason people don't turn out is because, as an example, they're a Lib Dem in an area where there are just Conservatives and Labour, and so they don't think the vote matters. So we've got to change that. The only way we can do it is move towards some form of proportional representation. It may be that one of the things that the Labour Party could do is, as a result of this, given that next year, hopefully, if we don't change prime ministers and that prime minister changes policy, we move towards local government reform, that they say that as a starting point, those new councils, when they're electing councillors after local government reform, will be elected using proportional representation. Because what it will be is a useful proof of concept, but it will also make councillors at a local level work very well together, or work together. And that will improve the way politics works. It will make it less yaboo. I've seen some evidence of that in some of the councils near where I live, where there are coalitions and rainbow coalitions, and they've worked, by and large, they've worked very, very well. Yes, things get a little bit more tight at election time, but one of the reasons for that I've seen is because of Lib Dem bar charts, which are all about getting Lib Dems the tactical vote. And in reality, those bar charts stretch what the real world is. But they wouldn't have to do that under a PR system. They would not have to start pushing for tactical votes, because they would win seats based on the number of people that voted Lib Dem based on the merits of the Lib Dems. That's also true, by the way, of every party, including Reform and including the Greens. People that genuinely supported what Reform stand for and what the Greens stand for would vote Reform and Green, and they would get the number of seats as a proportion of the votes they receive. That's how politics should work. Every single vote should work, especially when this spread of political parties that we've got means that people are being elected with less and less of a vote share, and therefore have less and less of a mandate. So the message to Keir Starmer, and I'm afraid to Kemi Badenoch, is they've got to learn lessons. And it's not just about policy. It's not just about doing policy better. It's not just about dealing with your core voter. It's about dealing with the malaise that there is in British politics. Once again, thank you very, very much for watching. If you've enjoyed it, please subscribe to the channel. I say it every time and I'll keep saying it. It really, really helps me if you subscribe, and it will make sure you're notified if and when I put more videos. If there's no if about it, I'm putting more videos out, but you'll be notified when I do. Thank you very much.